By the time parents are ready to hire a coach, a therapist, or a sleep trainer, they're usually desperate, which in my view puts them in a pretty vulnerable state for picking the wrong person to support them. Or they're so worried about picking the right person that they are frozen in that decision making and unable to pick someone that can help them move forward. So I'm excited with this episode to be able to delve into what you may want to consider when you're looking for support. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Baby Sleep Connection, a podcast that explores baby sleep and more through the lens of attachment and development. I'm your host, Heather Boyd. I'm a mom of 3, an occupational therapist, and a certified infant and family sleep specialist. If you are a tired parent who wants to support your baby sleep holistically, keep listening as we delve into approaches that go well beyond the usual strategies of wake windows and bedtime routines. Your baby's sleep is connected with so much more. Okay, I'm talking today about how to find the right sleep coach. Now, I drafted this podcast episode a while ago, and I wasn't sure whether to record it or not because it feels a little self-serving until I paused to think that no, this isn't self-serving because I may not be the right coach for you, and you might not even need a sleep coach. But if you do, it sure helps to know how to find one that resonates with you. And if you have some strategies to find the right support at the right time, then that is awesome. So let's go through some of the ways that you can help yourself when you are needing some sleep support to find someone that actually can support you in the way that you're looking for. Now, of course, if you've been following me for any time at all, you know that my approach is decidedly not sleep training. So I tend to attract families who are looking for alternatives to behavioral-based sleep training. There's also a bit of a draw to my holistic and occupational therapy lens, but there are many of you out there that may not even know what kind of support that you need, what that would look like, or if you even want to go through the effort. And believe me, I know that it takes an effort and a bit of courage to reach out to someone who you are hoping can support you through a vulnerable challenge. Of course, there are many vulnerable challenges in parenting. In and outside of sleep, feeding can be a pretty significant challenge that requires some support as well, and some bravery and courage to reach out for that support. So let's dive into why I think this is an important topic. When my little guy was born and he wasn't sleeping very well and nursing was going well, but I just felt like I just was untethered. I didn't have a sense of whether I was doing a good job. I didn't have any measure of success because my baby wasn't sleeping well. I went from a very competent and driven professional in the healthcare space to a very uncertain and very, maybe not timid parent, but I really hadn't found my firm ground yet. And I decided that maybe going to a La Leche League meeting would be a place that I could at least have someone that was in a leadership role give me a hug, give me some encouragement, give me some perspectives, and maybe even give me some insight on my baby's sleep and how it could be smoother. But I didn't make it to the meeting because by the time I gathered all the energy and diaper bag stuff I needed to go, I ended up on the wrong streetcar heading back home. I still don't know how I did it, although I do blame my sleep deprivation. And coming up from the subway, I was completely not sure which way was east and which was west. And I decided I was not getting off that streetcar and trying again, that was the effort I was going to make and that was the end of it. And I never made it to a La Leche League meeting. I look back and think that was such a missed opportunity. Now, I don't know that getting off one streetcar and getting on another would have served me well that night, but I do know that part of the pull wasn't just the sleep deprivation, that pull home, but part of it was that by the time the end of the day came and I'd spent my day alone with my baby, maybe in a baby and yoga class, maybe for a coffee with a friend, but mainly feeling pretty isolated. When my spouse came home, I didn't want to leave. Finally he was home and I just didn't want to go anywhere, even though in hindsight that support once a week or once every 2 weeks, or even if I'd gone once a month, would likely have made a profound difference. I can say that with some confidence, having never made it to that meeting, because I did access La Leche League support with my third. I think it was my third. Part of it, honestly, was to have some time out of the house. Even though I brought my baby with me, it was like this wonderful part of the week where I could connect with other moms, some of whom were struggling. Sometimes things were going well, but the connection, and we always had tea and someone always brought snacks, and it felt like amazing. And so part of the impetus for this episode is to let you know that on the other side of the effort of finding someone to support you can be absolutely wonderful connection, validation, support, and tools, strategies to help you through whatever challenge you're going through, whether it is sleep or feeding or mental health or anything, that there is something on the other side of this, and that it can be worth the effort and the time and the energy to get through to that other side where you're getting some support. So what I also want to say is, if sleep is going well, you probably don't need a sleep coach, although I will outline some of the reasons where it can be helpful. I never hear from parents whose babies are sleeping too long. They just don't come to me for some reason. But I often hear from parents who have told me they've waited and waited and waited for things to get better, and they haven't. And so they finally say yes to support. But they say yes after they have run themselves ragged. And I always encourage them moving forward, whether it's sleep or not, to look at where the need for them as parents, as human beings, the need for their baby is right now, and to not second guess what things will look like 3 months from now. I do the same thing with clients who book me for packages of like a block of sessions, and I say, don't save the sessions for later. It's like saving markers. When I was a kid, I would save my markers so long that by the time I went to use them, they were dried out. And so I say, use the sessions when you need it. Don't try to save them up for later or hoard them or try to space them out. If you need the support, book a session. That's what it's there for. Now, oftentimes I will say that sleep does get better. I would say most of the time. Eventually, sleep gets better because often this is developmental, but it does tend to go up and down like an elevator sometimes, and that can be really disconcerting as a parent who's trying to get a grasp on how to parent through sleep challenges. There are also families where sleep was great and then it completely goes sideways and they don't know what hit them. Or second sibling that make parents realize that their first didn't sleep well because of the parents. Like the parents, feel so good that things are going so well and they must be parenting so well. And then they get a second child and realize, no, this is temperament or a different kiddo altogether. And we actually don't know what we're doing, and we don't have any tools because we didn't need sleep tools or strategies the first time round. But I also get some parents where sleep really is going well. It's going, plugging along. You get your regular snags and ups and downs, but in general it's going well. And the parents want tools and strategies and perspectives to make sure that it continues to go well, or so that if it gets challenging, they already know what to do. They already feel like they have some tools in their toolbox to be able to use. And regardless of whether families are coming in with long-term problems or new challenges or no challenges at all, it is rewarding as a sleep coach to be able to help navigate parents to a point where they're feeling confident about the skills they have, the strategies they have, and their ability to lead their family through these situations with sleep. So I get a variety, right? But one thing that all the families that work with me do have in common is that desire to look at things through that responsive and developmental lens. But that's not everyone. So if you're listening to this and that is not your lens, you'll still get something out of my perspectives today. Now, I know as well, for all the families I do hear from, there are many, many families who are struggling with their baby's sleep and they're not getting the support. Either sleep is not the priority, as hard as it could be, because of other pressures, because there can be lots of other pressures. We look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs alone. When finances are a stress, or job losses, or illness or death in the family, sleep may be important, but it's getting buried by all these other pressures. It can also be a barrier simply to be overwhelmed in your parenting. It can make it very difficult to take action. It's almost like you're frozen and you're just in survival state. Now, many of my podcasts talk about mindfulness and talk about the use of breath to move out of parasympathetic nervous system into something more regulated when you are feeling overwhelmed. If you are aware of what is happening in your body and you are aware that your overwhelm is causing tension, you can feel it in your body, the pit in your stomach or tightness in your chest, that's a sign that some type of support, not necessarily coaching, but some type of support would be so valuable to allow you to get into a more regulated state. And whatever challenges you have on your plate, whether it is your baby's sleep or something else entirely, when you can be in a calm and regulated state, you're able to make better decisions, you're able to have energy to take action, to move forward on whatever challenge you're facing, and life can feel less like survival and move at least a little bit more towards thriving. Thriving might feel like a very long way away, but even if we're moving the needle a little bit. And I think the other piece too, and this is really the crux of why I want to talk about how to find the right sleep coach, is that families can be worried about finding the quote-unquote right support. I know that was part of the barrier for me. I'm a healthcare professional. I was really skeptical that anyone was going to take the right approach, that I would be, feel like they were knowledgeable enough, evidence-based enough, empathetic enough, weren't going to give me a cookie-cutter solution, were going to be able to handle my skepticism, my questions, and my high rigor for good quality coaching. So you could see already I was not setting myself up to be very open to coaching because my standards were understandably high. I think your standards should be high, but I think I actually talked myself out of some amazing opportunities for support because of the way that I was looking at what support should look like. So how can you find someone who's a good fit for you? I want to explore that today, because being worried about finding the right kind of support obviously got in my way, and I would really love for it not to get in your way. I had no clear sense of where to go for support. I wasn't sure what my priorities were, although sleep sure did seem to be one of them. I was concerned about a number of health contributors like reflux and food sensitivities, and I didn't know one iota about baby sleep. So I didn't know whether this was normal hard or whether it was hard. I just didn't know. So how do you find the right coach for you? It may not be the same as your friend or your sister, but how do you find the right one for you? The first thing I would suggest is you start with parenting values and priorities. So what are your priorities? Are they to find an evidence-based sleep coach? I find I attract a lot of teachers and therapists and healthcare professionals because of that. They want to know that this is not just a weekend course that I've taken and I'm applying some cookie cutter solutions. They want to know it's evidence-based. Do you want sleep training or do you not want sleep training? If you're open to sleep coaching or sleep training, are you looking for more gentle sleep training? Of course, when you're looking on websites, it can be so hard to figure out, read between the lines to figure out, is this just a glossed over version of sleep training? Is this truly gentle, or is this looking more holistically through a lens of development and attachment? And that can be tricky. That's part of why I often, when families are looking for someone to support them in or outside of sleep, and I'll give naturopath as an example. A lot of my families are looking for a naturopath, and I'll say go onto your Facebook mom group in town, like the one that's local to you geographically, and just do a search and see what comes up, because what will inevitably come up is a short list of the top mentioned naturopaths. And you can look through that and you're at least narrowing it down to the top 3 or 4 that come up the most. And that's a start. And you get a little sense of people that have actually worked with these people too. Now, for most of you, credibility is probably a value that you have around finding a coach. That doesn't have to be a regulated professional. I am a regulated healthcare professional, but I know some phenomenal sleep coaches that work through the same lens, the holistic lens as I do, attachment-based, developmentally based, who are not regulated healthcare professionals. The ones that I do know that do have regulated health professional background, some of them have a nursing background, Some of them, like me, are occupational therapists or psychotherapists, family therapists. There are some wonderful backgrounds, and for each of them, they're bringing forward some of the assets that they learned in that healthcare professional training, and they're applying it to sleep. Now, that doesn't mean any one particular one will be a good fit for you, but if you like that solid professional background, then that may be something worth looking at. Keep in mind as well that for many, they may have that professional regulation or the training, but are not currently regulated in that profession. They may be working solely as a sleep coach outside of their healthcare professional background, or they're still regulated, but their sleep practice is not under their healthcare profession. Just something to keep in mind, because in the grand scheme, I think most people are looking for someone who has the knowledge, capacity, and approach to support them in a way that is going to work well for them, with or without the professional license. So credibility could be that. It could come from that professional background, but it could also come from a referral from a trusted friend or one of your healthcare professionals that you already see. That connection is how I found our babysitter the first time I went back to work. And if any of you are navigating that, oh my goodness, I think this is one of the hardest things as a parent ever, to find reputable, caring daycare that you trust to take care of your kiddo when you return to work. And so I was so grateful that it turned out a friend of mine was on the same street as the daycare provider I was looking at. It turned out they were next door neighbors. And so I had a beautiful, real clear sense of this family before I even had a chance to meet this woman in person. And it was, I can't tell you how reassuring it was to have that connection. So, tap into your network. Tap into your network to find someone you trusts. Now, credibility and testimonials, I just want to say a word about that, because many healthcare professions fall under legislation that prevent testimonials from being used. I also want to say a word about testimonials, because sometimes it's not that they aren't legitimate, but they obviously are the clients that are happy with the service, and not necessarily obviously not the ones that aren't happy with the service. So use the testimonials to gain insight on the coach, rather than assume that this is the typical experience. So it may help you understand that this does sound like someone who aligns with you, that it really is truly gentle, responsive coaching, that they did take a holistic approach. I'll say, this is a weird example, I know, but when I was buying bathing suits when I was nursing, I went on the LL Bean website, or no, Land's End, I think, maybe it was LL Bean, I can't remember. I was trying to find bathing suits that I could wear at the beach and still nurse, and so I wanted something that worked. And so whatever website it was, the reviews were how I found my bathing suit, because I could find someone who wanted modest coverage. And so I often looked at the ones that were written by women 40 and above who were big chest. Some of them did mention nursing, but mainly I was looking for, how busty can I be in this thing and still feel like I'm not like hanging out, and that it's flexible or stretchy enough that I can nurse. Anyway, those reviews, I still remember how confident I was ordering these tankinis and bathing suits because of the reviews alone. And so I didn't expect to have the same experience as the person. I wasn't the same age. I wasn't at the same stage of life. However, the testimonials gave me the insight to find what I needed. And so use the testimonials that way if there are testimonials. But don't expect testimonials for healthcare professionals because of that legislation. Okay, so the next point I want to talk about is gestalt, or instinct. You got to trust some of this instinct that you have that's probably been buried under your desire to collect knowledge, data, and information, right? We will never know everything to be able to make decisions. We'll gather enough information to make an informed decision, and then instinct or gestalt can kick in too. Does this feel like a good fit? Now, for therapists that are out there working privately in therapy, in the therapy realm, it's really rare to have a free call. But in sleep coaching and doula work, it's super common. And so I'm kind of straddling the two. I do offer free calls, but for my sleep practice, if it's available, book the call. Book it so that you can have 15 or 20 minutes to talk with them. You can get a lot of information about connection. How well are they listening to you? Are they giving you that sense that they're going to be able to support you? Do they tell you what the limits of their work is? And I'm not talking about making promises or not making promises about outcome, but there should be some sense of, here is how I work, so that you know if this may be a good fit. And so for an example, I will tell parents that I do not do conventional sleep training. I work through a holistic model, which means we work together. There is no plan that I pull out that's already done when we work together. We're walking the path together so that parents know this isn't something I'm copying and pasting for them. We are developing it and walking through this through a holistic lens. We're going to learn about their baby. We're going to discover some things we didn't know. We're going to get to try things and see if they work and change course when they're not. And that sense of what is this going to actually look like can go a long way to figure out whether, is this the way that I like working with a professional or a coach, or do I need something different? I know a lot of parents are exhausted and they just want someone to tell them what to do. Now, in my experience, even when I was the most tired as a parent and I thought I wanted people to tell me what to do, in the end, having someone walk with me through the challenge made a lot more sense, because not only did I get through it, but I built my confidence and I had tools that I could use for the rest of my parenting career, inside and outside of whatever challenge I was tackling at the time with that coach. The next piece I'll say is to have the courage to take a step forward. And this is where you can get caught in survival mode and just be frozen. So I'll ask you to consider, will you be further along by taking action than if you stay where you are? You don't have to be all the way along. You don't have to reach your goal. You may not even be clear on what your goal is. You may just know that this doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel good, and you want this to feel easier. And if you have some support, will you be further along? I've had 2 clients that I've worked with that ended up, I referred them to a colleague of mine who does more conventional, yet gentle and very developmentally informed sleep training. But it was interesting because even though they ultimately ended up moving to my colleague for support, the groundwork we did served them well. And it was interesting because as a coach who takes this approach, at first I thought, oh my goodness, have I failed this family and not provided what they needed to get where they needed to go? And the fact is, the groundwork we did around understanding sleep, understanding their baby's temperament and sensory profile, understanding the dynamic of what their role was, what they had control over and what they didn't, and how to manage their observation and curiosity around what their kiddo needed, served them very well when they started working with my colleague. And so I look back at that experience and, just to bring some humanity to it, I thought, oh my goodness, is this okay? And I just thought, no, there was a time and place for this support, and now they're at a point where they need a different kind of support. I want you to appreciate that the right coach at the right time is really important. And your needs around coaching may change. Of course, this isn't just about sleep, but if it's about getting mental health support or a physical trainer or even someone to come clean your house, the need may change over time. And it's important to know that that doesn't mean you picked wrong. It doesn't mean that the person didn't help you immensely at that time. It just means that your needs have changed. Wanted to touch briefly on questions that you can ask to find out more information from a coach when you are talking to them, and perhaps questions not to ask, or at least questions that I find that I don't view as being genuinely helpful in figuring out whether someone is a good fit for you. I think it's really important to consider asking a potential coach, what do families who work with you say? And that can be a way, even if they don't have testimonials, to find out more about what changes and experiences do people have. I think it's important and valuable to ask, what will support look like too. Like, what does this actually look like? Coaches know, like, I know what it looks like, but when a family is calling, they may have trouble picturing it, or may have, even more to the point, a totally different idea of what support actually looks like because of a previous experience or a friend sharing their coaching experiences. And so what will this look like can give you, kind of paint that picture for you of what it's going to look like. Questions I would tend not to ask would include, what's your success rate? And I say that because with surgery or with a tutor who's trying to help someone pass a course, there's really measurable outcomes of success. But when we're talking about sleep, especially a holistic approach to sleep, we're not changing or manipulating the behavior of your baby to get them to not signal to you in the middle of the night. And so because much of that has to do with temperament and sensory and development and the individual needs that your baby has, it can be impossible to measure success in the true sense for a holistic coach, because frankly most of the outcomes that I would love to have highlighted aren't measured. They are confidence level of the parent, the ease that they find bedtime has. So bedtime may still require a parent to rock their baby or nurse their baby to sleep, but it feels so much easier because they've optimized the timing or the sensory activities during the day, and so everything feels smoother. We don't have control over sleep development, but we have control over the environment. That environment is partly physical and partly emotional and social, and the way that we interact and support our babies. So when we're trying to measure outcomes like that, it can be tricky. So I've had the occasional parent ask me what your success rate is, and I'm very honest that I don't measure success as like, I never ever promise that we'll get your kid sleeping through the night within 3 weeks. I think that is an unethical promise to make when most of the factors around sleeping through the night are not in the control of a parent or a coach, without being very behavioral based, where we're actually shaping the baby's signal toward a parent about what their needs are. So that's me, but if that success rate is super important and you're looking for a sleep trainer, then maybe it is a question that you ask. For the families that reach out to me, it tends not to be. And I'm always spending extra time with a family on a discovery call when they ask me that question, because I want to be absolutely sure that they know how I work, so that as we work through our time together, that won't be the pinnacle of whether this is working well or not. Which adds another aspect of this, which is to be open to coaching. The families that are really stuck on me fixing the sleep and making this a successful situation where their baby will be sleeping X number of hours a night, guaranteed, end up being a good fit. But if it's not, if their focus is on a very particular success point or a measure, I like parents to be able to open that up a little wider, to be curious about what else can change that actually gets you where you want to go. The pain point is sleep. Lack of sleep really hurts. So that focus could be on sleeping through the night, but your actual goal is to feel like you enjoy parenting again, or to feel like you are well connected and have a secure attachment with your baby. And that there are research methods for measuring that. I don't measure that in my practice, but in research you can look at ways to measure it if parents are open and curious about coaching. So being really open to shifting the way that they look at things, then the door opens to so many more possibilities. So I would say if the question on the tip of your tongue is what's your success rate, my counter question would be success rate for what? For sleep training, for parenting ease, for making sleep make sense to you so that you can tackle new problems that come months and months down the road. The other question that I often get from families, and the prelude to the question is, my child is currently sick, or we're about to go on vacation, or I'm about to return to work, should we wait? And I would say if you're taking a conventional sleep training approach, yes, wait, because those are particular steps that you follow 1, 2, 3, 4. And you need to have those things not be moving parts in all this, like sickness and vacation and whatnot. In general, though, when you are interested in a responsive, holistic approach, my question is, why wait? Because while you are supporting your baby who's getting over teething or sickness, or you're moving into vacation and wondering how to have sleep not get worse, or to be curious about ways that you might actually set the stage for it to be better, even in spite of the changes with vacation, what perspectives or strategies or shifts can you make now that will help the pieces fall into place as things settle out? I'll talk again about that runway to sleep that I often talk about. Change takes time. And for me in particular, as a human being, I like to have the template and the strategies and the perspectives ahead of time. It takes a while for me to mull them over and make them make sense in a way that I can apply them in my life. So I like to gather things before I'm ready, because when I'm ready, I want to have the pieces I already need. Oftentimes part of that is getting curious about what is making it hard right now. This fits well with the parents that wait and wait and wait for a challenge to get better. And when it doesn't, they're like, oh, I guess we could have gotten support ahead of time to figure out the pieces. Because even if it wasn't going to get better fast, there must have been ways to make this easier and more tolerable, less taxing. Like find those ways that even if sleep remains a challenge for the short run, that you have something in place to take the edge off, right? To be able to cope and to be moving away from survival into thriving. To wrap up, I want to point out that the biggest priority is to find a coach or therapist that's aligned with your approach as a parent. And I'll add that can work with you as a partner. So you may not like all of the ideas that they suggest, but if they are open to listening to you and to really working to understand what sleep looks like in your family and for your baby, then that is huge. It's super important. I think if you're reaching out to coaches, sit with it. Let yourself mull over the decision. You may have a really strong yes, in which case, if you feel confident in your yes, go for it. Because you can't sit with it forever if you're looking to move forward. So the second part of that is sit with it, or sit with it and take action to reach out for support. I think being open and curious is really fundamental, both in that initial call that you may have with the sleep coach, but also through the coaching. Because if you're open and curious, you're going to get so much more out of the coaching experience than if you stay really rigid. I'll compare this to birth plans. When you have a very rigid birth plan and you have very specific ideas of what it's going to look like, and then it doesn't look that way, you don't have any backup plans or any flexibility or malleability. I want you to think of this more like water that's going to change direction as we learn more about your baby and figure out what is it that we can do to make this easier right now without changing your baby, and then how do we set the stage for the things to come. I hope this helped. I would love to hear from you if I missed anything that you think is really important in your choice of a coach, and to find out which strategy stands out the most to you. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and sending you sweet sleep vibes for tonight. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining me on this episode. I do hope that you found the information and perspectives in this podcast episode helpful to you as you navigate your baby's sleep development. Of course, this podcast provides general information, and it isn't tailored to your family's reality or the specific needs of your baby. If you're concerned about your baby's sleep or health, be sure to reach out to your healthcare provider. If you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and you need a place to feel nurtured and reassured, you can find me on Instagram at familysleep.ca. Until next episode, look for the connections that support you and your baby.